Eliana sat on the front porch, her body wrapped in the thinnest blanket she owned. Snow fell slowly, landing on her hair, her cheeks, her eyelashes. She tried to pull the blanket tighter around herself, but her fingers were already numb. It was Christmas night. Everyone else in the neighborhood was warm inside their homes, celebrating with family. But she was here, outside, alone. Her father had pushed her out the door after she talked back. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't been rude. She had simply said she felt hurt when they forgot to buy her a gift. That was enough for Diane and Robert. They locked the door behind her, as if she were some unwanted stranger. Inside the house, she could hear them laughing. The sound cut through the cold air like a knife. Glasses clinked together, her mother's sharp laugh echoed, and Mason, her younger brother, shouted with excitement as he opened gift after gift. Eliana hadn't been given anything. She hadn't even been allowed to sit in the living room earlier. Through the thin window, she saw lights glowing warmly. She heard her mother's voice clearly when the wind quieted for a moment. "She needs to learn her place," Diane said. Her place. What was her place? Why was it always outside? Why was she always the mistake, the problem, the one they blamed? Eliana felt tears slipping down her face, but they froze almost instantly on her skin. She didn't make a sound. She didn't want them to hear her crying and feel satisfied. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to create warmth with her own body. Her hands stung, then slowly stopped feeling anything at all. Inside, Mason complained that the sweater he got wasn't the exact color he wanted. Their mother immediately comforted him. Their father said he'd buy him another one tomorrow. Eliana listened quietly. She knew the pattern well. Her father avoided everything hard. He never defended her, never stood up for her. If Diane made a decision, he simply followed. Her mother was cold in a way that didn't make sense. She had a smile for everyone outside the house, but for Eliana, she had only sharp words, punishment, and disappointment. Mason, of course, lived like a little prince. Every mistake he made became Eliana's fault. Every praise he received was for doing nothing. He never suffered, not once. As the night grew colder, Eliana felt her body trembling. Her breath came out in shaky clouds. She wondered if they even remembered she was outside, or if they cared. Deep down, she knew the answer. "I don't belong here," she whispered to herself. The snow kept falling. The laughter inside grew louder. And as she sat there, freezing and forgotten, she didn't know it yet, but this Christmas night would become the beginning of everything that changed her life forever. Eliana was always blamed for the things Mason did. If a vase broke, it was her fault. If Mason lied, she was the one punished. If he shouted, if he fought, if he made a mess, Diane would turn to Eliana and say, "Why didn't you stop him?" Even when she was barely 8 years old, she was expected to be responsible for everything. As a child, Eliana learned to stay quiet. She learned that her feelings didn't matter, that crying only made things worse. She taught herself how to survive emotionally. She comforted herself when she was scared. She encouraged herself when she felt small. She learned to be strong because no one else would be strong for her. Mason, on the other hand, grew up with everything handed to him. Their mother called him her little king. Their father ignored his faults because dealing with them would require effort. Mason learned early that he could lie, cheat, yell, and blame others, and nothing would happen to him. Diane would protect him. Robert would pretend nothing happened. And Eliana would suffer the punishment. By the time she turned 12, she had stopped expecting love from her parents. By 15, she stopped trying to earn it. And at 17, after that cold Christmas night on the porch, she quietly promised herself that one day she would leave and never come back. Now at 23, she lived on her own. Her apartment was tiny, just one small room with a bed, a table, and a kitchenette. But it was hers. No one shouted at her here. No one blamed her here. No one called her ungrateful or useless. She worked 2 jobs just to survive. In the mornings, she was a cashier at a grocery store. At night, she worked at a small cafe. Her days were long. Her feet always hurt, and her body was always tired. But she preferred exhaustion over the pain of her childhood home. She had cut contact with her family years ago. Mostly. Her parents still sent messages sometimes, manipulative ones. "We raised you, you owe us. Your brother needs help. Send money. Don't you care about family?" She ignored most of them. She had learned not to respond. She had learned that talking to them only reopened wounds she had tried so hard to close. Mason, now 21, still lived with their parents. He had never worked a single day. He spent his time playing games, going out with friends, or sleeping until the afternoon. Diane treated him like a fragile treasure, always defending him, always protecting him from reality. Eliana didn't envy him. She pitied him. He would never grow, never learn, never stand on his own. While she had learned to survive, Mason remained a child in a grown man's body. The only real support Eliana had in her life was Layla. They met in high school, during a time when Eliana was at her lowest. Layla was the first person who noticed the sadness Eliana tried to hide. She was the one who comforted her, the one who stood by her, the one who understood the quiet pain other people ignored. Layla was there the night Eliana broke down after being locked outside in the snow. She was the one who wrapped her in warm blankets, made her tea, and held her while she cried. Since then, Layla had become more than a friend. She became the family Eliana never had. Even now, when Eliana felt overwhelmed, Layla was the person she called. She listened without judgment. She encouraged her. She reminded her that she deserved kindness, love, and peace. Still, the Christmas trauma stayed with Eliana as she grew older. It shaped her into someone who carried her heart carefully. She rarely let people get close. She always expected disappointment. She feared being forgotten, being thrown aside, being punished for simply existing. She lived quietly, kept her circle small, and focused on surviving each day. She had dreams but kept them hidden, too scared to hope for more. But life was strange. Sometimes it changed without warning. Sometimes it brought unexpected moments, unexpected chances, unexpected turns. And even though Eliana didn't know it yet, something was coming. Something big. Something that would take her life, twist it, shock her, and force her to rebuild everything she thought she understood. Her world was about to change in a way she never imagined. Eliana bought the lottery ticket on a whim after a long, tiring shift. She didn't plan to. She was standing in line at the small store near her apartment, her eyes half closed from exhaustion, when she saw the bright blue ticket on the counter. Something in her said, why not? She had never won anything in her life, but she handed the cashier a few dollars and slipped the ticket into her pocket before heading home. That same week, her phone rang. It was her mother. Eliana, you need to send money, Diane said sharply. Your brother's bills are overdue again. You know how stressed he gets. Eliana closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She was sitting on her bed, still in her work uniform, shoes kicked off, back aching. She had heard this same sentence 100 times. Usually, she sent whatever she could, $10, $50, sometimes even 100, leaving herself with almost nothing. But this time, something inside her finally broke. No, Mom, she said quietly. I can't. I won't pay Mason's bills anymore. There was silence for 2 seconds. Then the explosion came. What do you mean no? Her mother snapped. We raised you. You're selfish, ungrateful. Mason is your brother. Her father's voice joined from the background, shouting, You think you're better than us now? You think you don't owe your family? They threw guilt at her like stones. You're heartless. We should have never trusted you. You abandoned us. You don't deserve to be part of this family. Eliana's hand shook as she held the phone, but she didn't change her answer. I said no, she whispered, then hung up before they could continue attacking her. That night, she barely slept. She replayed their words until her stomach hurt. Part of her felt guilty, but another part, deep inside, felt strangely free. The next morning, she heated leftover noodles and sat on the floor with her bowl. As she ate, she remembered the lottery ticket still in her coat pocket. She pulled it out, not expecting anything, and opened her phone to check the numbers. She read them slowly. Once, twice, her bowl slipped from her hands and fell onto the floor, noodles scattering across the tiles. Her breath caught in her chest. Her hands began to tremble. She won. She won $150 million. For a long moment, she couldn't move. She just sat there, staring at the glowing numbers on her screen. This can't be real, she whispered. But it was. The first person she called was Layla. Her voice broke as she told her. Oh my God, Eli, this is life-changing, Layla said, almost crying with her. But you need to be careful. Don't tell anyone else. Eliana knew that. She knew her parents would destroy her peace if they found out. She met a lawyer the next day, hands still shaking. The lawyer helped her create a private trust, protect her identity, and move the money safely. For the first time in her life, Eliana felt the ground shift beneath her feet, not in fear, but in possibility. She started planning quietly, planning freedom, planning distance, planning a life without the people who had hurt her the most. She had no idea where this road would lead, but she knew one thing. She was never going back. Eliana moved into a more stable apartment, but she did it quietly. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it was clean, warm, and safe. She finally had a real bedroom, a small living area, and a kitchen that didn't leak. For the first time, she woke up without fear of someone yelling at her or blaming her for something she didn't do. She also started therapy. At first, she felt nervous talking to a stranger, but slowly she relaxed. Her therapist helped her understand her trauma, her childhood pain, and her habit of blaming herself for everything. Little by little, Eliana learned how to breathe again, really breathe. She made a routine for herself, morning walks, healthier meals, journaling before bed. Her life was still simple, but it felt steady. Meanwhile, things at her parents' house were falling apart. Their finances were collapsing. Years of careless spending had finally caught up. Their house was close to foreclosure, and they were drowning in bills. Mason, who had never worked a single day, had fallen into a gambling habit. He owed money to people who were not patient or kind. Debt collectors started showing up at the door. Suddenly, Eliana's parents changed their tone. Instead of insults, they began sending her sweet, emotional messages. "We miss you so much, sweetheart. Family isn't perfect, but we love you. You're still our daughter. Please come visit." Her father even sent her a message saying, "If we did anything wrong, we're sorry." Eliana stared at the texts with a heavy heart. She could see right through them, but the old guilt crept in anyway. The same guilt she felt as a child. The guilt they had planted deep in her, telling her she wasn't enough, telling her she was supposed to fix everything. Her chest tightened. Her hands trembled. She felt like she was 17 again, freezing on the porch, waiting for someone to open the door. Layla noticed her stress right away. "Don't fall for it, Eli," she warned gently. "They don't want you. They want what they think you can give them. You owe them nothing." Eliana wanted to believe that. She tried to repeat the words in her head, but her heart hurt anyway. Her parents didn't stop with the texts. One afternoon, while she was working her shift at the cafe, they walked in. Diane marched straight to the counter with Robert following behind, red-faced and loud. "Eliana," her mother shouted. "Why are you ignoring us? Why don't you answer your phone?" Customers turned and stared. Eliana felt her stomach drop. "Mom, please," she whispered. "I'm at work." But Diane didn't care. She went on and on about how Eliana was disrespectful and selfish. Robert complained loudly that Mason was stressed and needed help. They both made a scene so embarrassing that Eliana wished she could disappear. Her boss asked them to leave. Diane stormed out shouting, "We didn't raise you to be ungrateful." Eliana froze behind the counter, face burning, tears threatening to fall. Layla came after her shift with warm food and a hug, reminding her she wasn't alone. Her parents left angry, confused, and suspicious. They still didn't know about the lottery money, but they noticed one thing. Eliana suddenly seemed more stable. Better clothes, a nicer apartment, a calmer life. They wanted to know why. One night, Diane's curiosity turned into greed. She remembered Eliana's old email, the one she didn't use anymore. Diane tried the password they used for everything in the house. It still worked. She opened the inbox. And there it was, a message titled, "Congratulations on your lottery win, $150 million. Diane's eyes widened. Her breath stopped. Her hands shook with pure shock. Then greed swallowed her whole. She called Robert immediately. Mason heard too. "She has the money," Diane whispered, shaking with excitement and anger. "She has been hiding it from us. Millions. While we suffer." Their shock twisted into rage. Rage that she didn't tell them. Rage that she didn't share. Rage that she dared to live without them. And from that moment, their plan changed. They didn't want Eliana back. They wanted her money. All of it. Eliana was returning home from work when she saw them, her parents and Mason, standing right outside her apartment building. Her heart dropped. She froze on the sidewalk, gripping her bag tightly. Before she could turn around, her mother stepped forward. "You owe us," Diane said sharply. "You need to repay 23 years of parenting." Her father crossed his arms. "We fed you. We clothed you. We kept a roof over your head. Now it's your turn to take care of us." Mason glared at her like she was a criminal. "You stole our blessing, Eliana. That money should have been for the whole family. You cheated us." Eliana felt her chest tighten. "I didn't steal anything. I bought the ticket myself, but they didn't want to listen." The next week, she was shocked when she received official papers at her door. Her parents had filed a lawsuit against her. They claimed she owed them emotional and financial support. They even accused her of abandoning her family and causing Mason mental stress. It was ridiculous, but it was also terrifying. The court battle began. Every hearing felt like reopening old wounds. Her parents arrived dressed nicely, acting like they were saints and she was an ungrateful child. They told the judge she had been raised with love and that they sacrificed everything for her. Mason sat beside them, pretending to look hurt, shaking his head dramatically whenever Eliana spoke. But Eliana wasn't the quiet child they used to control. With her lawyer beside her and Layla in the front row for support, she stood tall. When it was her turn to speak, she told the truth, all of it. She explained the years of neglect, the constant blame, the emotional abuse. She handed the judge printed messages from her parents, insults, guilt trips, threats. She shared medical records from the night she was left outside in the freezing cold. And finally, she showed the photos of that Christmas night when she had sat on the porch, crying silently while her family celebrated without her. The courtroom was silent. Her parents looked shocked, embarrassed, angry. Mason rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath. Then her lawyer revealed something else. Mason had tried to forge her signature on banking documents weeks earlier. He had hoped to access her funds before she even knew. The judge leaned back, unimpressed and disappointed. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge ruled completely in Eliana's favor. The lawsuit was thrown out. Her parents were fined for harassment, and Mason faced charges for attempted fraud. Eliana could finally breathe, but the biggest shock came later. After the hearing, her aunt quietly approached her in the hallway. She had watched the entire trial without saying a word. "Eliana," she whispered gently, "there's something you need to know." Eliana looked at her, confused. "You were never the unwanted child," the aunt continued. "Mason was. Your parents struggled with him from the beginning. He was difficult, spoiled, and they couldn't control him. They were disappointed, but they didn't want people to know." Eliana's breath caught. "So they took it out on me?" she asked softly. Her aunt nodded. "You were stronger. You were easier to blame. They resented you because you didn't break the way they expected." Eliana felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. She finally understood why they had treated her the way they did. Not because she deserved it, but because she didn't. And in that moment, she knew one thing for sure. She was done with them forever. Eliana cut off all contact with her parents and Mason. She blocked their numbers, their emails, and every way they could reach her. For the first time in her life, her world felt quiet. No shouting, no guilt, no sudden fear. Just peace. But Eliana didn't want to spend her life hiding. She wanted to use her pain for something good. She remembered how lonely she had felt growing up, how forgotten, how invisible. She knew there were other girls out there who felt the same way. So she decided to do something meaningful. With a part of her lottery money, Eliana created a foundation to help emotionally neglected teenage girls. She wanted it to be a safe place, a place she wished she had when she was younger. She hired trained therapists, counselors, and community workers who understood trauma. They offered free emotional support, emergency housing, and mentoring programs. Eliana visited often, not as a rich donor, but as someone who understood their pain. She listened to the girls' stories with patience and kindness. She didn't try to fix them. She just made sure they knew they were not alone. Slowly, Eliana began rebuilding her own life too. She allowed only healthy friendships into her heart. Layla stayed by her side through everything, listening, supporting, and cheering her on. With Layla, she felt safe. There were movie nights, long talks on the balcony, and spontaneous road trips that filled her life with warmth she had never known growing up. Therapy helped her understand that her parents' cruelty wasn't her fault. She learned how to set boundaries, how to communicate her needs, and how to protect her heart. She even learned how to enjoy silence without feeling scared. Most importantly, Eliana started learning how to love herself. She cooked meals that made her feel cared for. She decorated her home with soft lights and warm colors. She wrote in her journal, not about pain, but about things that made her smile. She took long walks in clean morning air, feeling lighter with each step. One day, while watching the girls at her foundation laugh during a group activity, Eliana realized something powerful. She had created the family she never had. A family built on love, not fear. And little by little, she grew into the woman her younger self desperately needed. She became gentle, strong, and full of quiet courage. She healed in her own time, in her own way. Eliana finally knew something she had never believed before. She was worthy of love. She was worthy of peace. And her life no longer belonged to pain. It belonged to her. Years later, Eliana walked past her childhood home on Christmas night. The snow was falling gently, and the lights in the windows twinkled like they always had. For a moment, she stopped and looked at the house where so many cold memories had been made. The nights she was ignored, the tears she had cried on the porch, the pain she had carried for years. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small note. Placing it carefully on the porch, she whispered to herself, "You left me out in the cold. I found my warmth without you." She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly from her shoulders. Turning away from the house, she walked down the snow-covered street toward the warm glow of a restaurant where Layla and her chosen family waited. Laughter, joy, and love filled the air there, things she had built for herself. As she stepped inside, leaving the old life behind, a quiet smile formed on her lips. She finally felt it, peace, belonging, and a home she had chosen herself. This time, I'm finally home. Hey besties, thanks for watching all the way through. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.